Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Kirby Smart, Georgia, going on the road, playing Tennessee, and there is a laundry list of reasons to be fired up about this matchup. First and foremost, as college football fans, we live for these kind of football games. But number two, specifically for Georgia fans, there are certain questions that, I would argue need to be answered Saturday on the road against Tennessee if Georgia's going to go on the road and take care of business. Now, what are these questions? That's the purpose of this episode. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, the Georgia fans, appreciate you guys. And many of y'all know we talk this team 12 months out of a year. The amount of support this fan base has shown the boys in the summer, breaking down commitments, in the spring when we're talking about spring ball, it's been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, if you're a Georgia fan listening to this on a Wednesday afternoon, chances are you got some questions of your own. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, excuse me. The first question that I want to get into is how much does Mike Bobo really trust Gunnar Stockton? And I think this is a legitimate question. I think a lot of Georgia fans that follow this program closely know this is a question because you look at the version of that Georgia offense that we've seen the first 2 weeks. I think it would be fair to say the training wheels have been left on this offense. And maybe that's just not Georgia wanting to unload the clip in terms of their call sheet. That certainly could be a factor. But when you start looking at the numbers, Gunnar Stockton average depth to target 5.1 yards down the field. Not a lot. You look at 83% of Gunnar Stockton's throws being inside of 10 yards. You look at 22% of the dropbacks being screen passes. Only one completion in the first 2 games has gone for over 20 plus yards in the air. You're looking at this Georgia offense and say, it's been a lot of quick stuff. We haven't asked Gunnar to sit in the pocket, process, and push that sucker down the field. That is an element of this offense that needs to be present, not only to go on the road and beat Tennessee, but for this team to really be a national championship contender. We haven't seen it yet. You feel like you need to see it on the road against Tennessee if Georgia wants to go and win this football game. The second conversation here is, are these wide receivers the real deal? And the reason I'm focusing so much on this Georgia passing attack is that look at Tennessee. They're down their 2 best cornerbacks on that roster, Ricky Gibson and Jermod McCoy. They're going to have a transfer in Colton Hood on one side. They're going to have a true freshman in Ty Redmond on the other side. You're looking at it and saying, hey, we certainly have question marks about those Tennessee safeties. We had question marks about the Tennessee safeties going back to 2024. You're looking at this Georgia offense and say, hey, if we're going on the road and scoring enough points to beat Tennessee, you feel like that vertical passing attack is going to have to be present. And you look at Gunnar and say, Gunnar has put it on the film. He has shown us that he can throw a hell of a deep ball. Go back to what he was doing in the back half of 2024. The question is not his capability. The question is, does Mike Bobo have the confidence in Gunnar Stockton to go on the road against Tennessee and go make those kind of throws? The second question is these wide receivers. You invested a lot of money to bring in Noah Thomas, invested a lot of money to bring in Zachariah Branch. Are these the wide receivers that can go on the road against Tennessee and go up and make plays for your quarterback? I specifically look at Noah Thomas and say, I want to see him get more involved as a vertical pass catcher. The more you get Noah Thomas involved as a vertical pass catcher, the more the space opens up for a kid like Zachariah Branch underneath. That when you close your eyes and envision the best version of this Georgia offense, you're closing your eyes and saying, all right, Noah Thomas, Colby Young, big body pass catchers that can make plays vertically down the field, that make defenses respect what they can do work in the deeper third of the football field. And then you have Zachariah Branch being a monster after the catch. That's the ceiling of this Georgia offense. You want to see it against Tennessee this weekend. How about this one? Can they run the football when they want to? Which we all know was a very big problem towards the back half of 2024. Again, I think this conversation goes hand in hand with the passing attack. It's really hard to run the football in the SEC when you're running into loaded boxes. That's kind of what teams were doing towards the back half when there was just zero respect shown for these wide receivers on the outside. To me, I would argue if you want to get the run game going, you have to show what you can do pushing the ball down the field. If Tennessee wants to walk their safeties into the box to support the run, you have to show the ability to make them pay pushing it vertically down the field. And if you show that, you start getting some lighter boxes. Maybe that run game has a little bit more oxygen to breathe. Anytime you go on the road, especially when you go to Knoxville, Tennessee, you want to make sure you can run the football. And again, this is a Tennessee front seven that I believe is better than I thought it was going to be heading into 2025. They're still banged up front. And if you're Georgia and you're trying to envision a national championship caliber team, a team that can go on the road and beat Tennessee, you have to have a semblance of the run game. Offensive line moving bodies. I mean, we know what Nate Frazier can do. I've been extremely impressed with how Chauncey, you talk about a running back that can run the ball really hard. I'm not going to compare him to a guy like Zamir White, but that's kind of the vibe you get where it's like, hey, I'm going to attack the line of scrimmage and I'm going to go give you 4 or 5 really hard yards, keep this offense on schedule. That's the vibe I'm getting from Chauncey Bowens. He's been really impressive to start the 2025 year. That vertical passing attack, the trust that we have in Gunnar Stockton, that's number one. And if we can get that going, like I think you're going to see this Georgia team start running the football a little bit better. Switching over to the defensive side of the football, the biggest question mark I have for Georgia going into this one, who is your difference maker as a pass rusher? Right. And I'm specifically talking about these guys coming off the edge because I look at Christian Miller and say, yeah, we kind of know he's a guy. You've seen some good things from Jordan Hall. You've seen some good things from Elijah Griffin. I'm looking at the edge. I'm looking at a guy like Gabe Harris. I'm also looking at a guy like Chris Cole. And Chris Cole, I have him listed as an off-ball linebacker. We can just go ahead and move him. Like, let's not beat around the bush. He's a guy that is working in as that jack pass rusher. And look, he might be one of the best, if not the best, pure pass rushers that you see on this football team. That to me is really important because I'm looking at this matchup and say, hey, what's the one thing that you really want to do if you want to go on the road and win? You want to get after Joey Aguilar. Joey's looked really, really good throwing the football for Tennessee. He hasn't really seen a front that gives him muddy pockets. He hasn't really been put off his spot. Can Georgia do that, especially when you're having that conversation of, hey, there's a real good chance at the right tackle position, Tennessee's going to be starting a true freshman in his first career start against Georgia. Like the moment's going to be big for that kid. And David Sanders, look, he's a really damn good football player. Is he up for the task in his first career start? And can a guy like Chris Cole be that guy? You ask me, who's been the most impressive and natural pass rusher on this team coming off the edge? The answer is very clearly Chris Cole. And so how well does Georgia get after this team? Because you close your eyes and, again, envision a Georgia team that wins national championships. They have these kind of guys. When it's 3rd and long and it's time to pin your ears back and go get after the quarterback, they've always had the answers. They've always had the guys who can go wreck games. We're still not sure who that is outside of Christian Miller. Can Chris Cole be that guy for Georgia Saturday afternoon against Tennessee? Last question I'll have, can we continue to see the impact these off-ball linebackers give Georgia? What I mean by that is, all right, maybe you don't have a Jalen Carter or a Jordan Davis or a Nolan Smith or a Trevon Walker coming off the edge. And I apologize if I left out some really good Georgia pass rushers. We still want to have that disruption, the negative play production, so to speak. We still want sacks. We still want tackles for loss. How can we manufacture that with this Georgia defense? I've been really impressed with how Georgia has used CJ Allen, has used Raylan Wilson. There's a very concerted effort to allow these two kids, who are some of the best linebackers in the sport, to have a little bit bigger of an impact on this game. Because you go back to CJ Allen last year and say, CJ Allen's one of the best linebackers in the country. Was that kind of guy last year. He had 1 sack and only 3 TFLs. Like the game-changing plays weren't necessarily there with CJ Allen. And that was okay because you had a guy like Jalen Walker and you had a guy like Michael Williams. With this version of Georgia, if I'm Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, and I'll just grant it here, I'm sitting in my basement in Rochester, New York. There's a reason Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann get paid the money to do this. I'm looking at it and saying, if I'm trying to replace all that negative play production, I am shouldering that on Raylan Wilson, and I'm shouldering that on CJ Allen. That's what I'm looking for. I think that's what you need if Georgia goes on the road and beats Tennessee and becomes that national championship caliber team. Football character. And this is I feel like a fool asking this question. The reason I ask it is it better than what it was last year? I'm talking about the football character of this team in general, right? Gunnar Stockton making his first career road start, I believe. Everything we've heard is, hey, the leadership that Gunnar Stockton brings to Georgia is just a little bit different than what Carson Beck was giving you last year. Gonna need that on the road against Tennessee. The other question is, all right, when you don't have guys like a Tate Ratledge or a guy like Malachi Starks, who are the guys, and how does this program, how does this specific Georgia team handle moments like this? It's another question I think you'll get answered against Tennessee as well. Again, it's not a concern. It's more just a comment. And maybe the football character is better for Georgia. In fact, it might be with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. We'll close it out there. It really, not only just a fun game from just an environment standpoint, two of the best teams in college football going head to head. You're going to learn a lot about this Georgia team. And we knew we had questions. These questions got to get answered Saturday afternoon. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.